Do you know what one of the biggest surprises for me was when we went carnivore?
No, what was it?
It was that my body sort of leaned out and I got more muscle definition than I ever have had in my life, even when I was dancing all the time, when I was much more active, when I was going to the gym and lifting weights.
And that happened when you started carnivore?
Shortly after. I mean, It wasn't like it happened like that.
Well, let's see it.
But look.
Look at that definition.
Yeah, I've never had this before in my life. Especially, let me tell you, I don't do a lot of exercising.
So one of the reasons why this is that for the first time in your life, you are actually feeding your body what it needed. Mm-hmm. It needed the protein to build those muscles. Yeah.
Back when I was really, really more athletic, I lived mostly on pastas and rice and other grains. So this was revolutionary for me. I could not believe that this is what really transformed my body.
And we talk about protein a lot. It's very de rigueur. Is that the right phrase?
It is.
At this time in 2025 is to make sure you're getting your protein. But how does it work? How does eating protein in a beef steak, which is beef muscle, end up in your bicep?
How does that happen?
And we're going to talk about that today.
We are. I'm JJ. I am a life coach and I eat mostly meat.
I'm Eric. I'm a novelist and I eat mostly meat too. So the body is made. Oh, by the way, if you listen to us like a podcast, you're going to want to watch this one because there are slides.
Mm-hmm. And Eric does not make slides unless it's really necessary.
Yeah, like justifying buying a tractor.
You did do that.
Yeah, but I don't like slide decks. I don't like looking at them. But it is useful in this particular case because there's terminology.
Yeah, I know I need it to track. So.
All right. So the body is made of protein. And it shows up obviously in muscle, but collagen in tendons, cartilage, ligaments, all protein. Bone is 30% collagen, scaffold that gives it its structure. That's protein.
I get that, but I just think the push was always about just calcium.
Well,
that's all I heard about growing up was just calcium for bones.
Well, the rest of it is mostly calcium mineral, but you need protein to build muscle.
Yeah. And bone.
Which is what I meant to say when I said muscle. Mm-hmm. Hormones, insulin is a kind of a pseudoprotein. It's a peptide hormone. Glucagon, luteinizing hormone, follicle stimulating hormone, and many, many other hormones. Hormones are proteins. Enzymes are all proteins. So you may have heard of amylase in your saliva that breaks down sugar when you are eating it. Of course, we don't ever have to use our amylase. Pepsin in our stomach breaks down proteins, and there's tons of other enzymes throughout the body. Those are proteins. Blood hemoglobin, which the red blood cells carry around, that's a protein. The white blood cells, they have enzymes, they have receptors, they have cytokines, all proteins. So it's not just the muscle. And a peptide, which we mentioned before, GLP-1, which is very famous right now, is a peptide made in the gut. And actually, I was confused about it because GLP stands for glucagon-like peptide. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, well, what do you mean glucagon-like? We know glucagon is made by the pancreas, and it in part signals the liver to make energy, like through gluconeogenesis. So what is this gut peptide doing that's like a glucagon? Well, it turns out it's doing almost the opposite of glucagon.
Really?
But it's called glucagon-like because it's structured like glucagon, but its action is counter to glucagon. And so it tends to lower blood sugar, which is why it's given to people with diabetes. Well, it's not given. The GLP-1 agonists are actually prompting more release of this peptide from the gut. So an agonist sounds like it should be against, but agonist means it's actually provoking the release.
But this is all these things contain a large amount of protein.
These are all proteins, or in the case of peptides, they're made out of amino acids.
Okay.
Which we will be talking about momentarily. So let's look at the cow muscle. This is courtesy of the American Angus Association. We've seen this diagram of cuts of meat off of a poor cow many, many times. And if we look here kind of in the rib area, that's where the famous rib eye comes from. You know, that's a big cut, and then that's cut in turn into smaller slabs, which we call a steak. Any one of these cuts are made of the exact same amino acids, some in different proportions, but mostly every bite of any of these are going to give you what you need.
So a rump roast versus a ribeye versus
none of that
a
matters.
shank.
The difference is in the amount of collagen and connective tissue that might be in it. And all that is just a higher amount of, say, glycine than maybe would be in a lean flank steak or something.
Okay.
So if we look at the muscle protein and understand how the muscle is constructed, a muscle is a bundle of fascicles. And you might recognize the beginning of that word from fascia. Fascicles, in turn, are bundles of muscle fibers, which are distinct from fibers like in plants. Think of like the fiber of a rope that they're twisted together. And these muscle fibers, each one is an individual muscle cell. And these are big cells. The longest muscle fiber in the human body goes from the hip down to the leg, and it's very long, but these can be quite long, and they're a single cell, and each of these cells has many nuclei, because normally we think of a cell as having one nucleus.
Yeah.
And the reason is because it's so long, you need multiple nuclei to contain DNA in order for local building and enzymatic processes to occur that don't need to then travel several inches, or for those of you in other parts of the world, centimeters. What else? So a muscle cell is mostly made out of proteins. Follow me now? So we've gone to muscle, to fascicle, to muscle fiber cells, and a muscle cell is made out of proteins.
So we're getting more and more minuscule
smaller and smaller
as we go along.
Mm-hmm.
So like from the big Lego chunk to the tiny little single.
Yep.
Okay.
And proteins are chains of amino acids. All right, and an amino acid is a molecule. It's a very specific molecule, and I am not going the next level down to show you the carbon, oxygen, hydrogen, and whatever else it is, but the fundamental component of an amino acid is the same, and then depending on what's attached to it, it becomes one of the 20 amino acids the body uses to make a human or any other animal. So in the reverse of this, we can see you can get from cow, you have to then somehow get these amino acids into the human. And that's really the rest of our story here. So what happens when we eat meat? When we're eating these muscles. Mm-hmm. So in the stomach, enzyme, which is also a protein, chops up the protein that you just ate into smaller pieces. And then it continues down to the small intestine, where trypsin, chymotrypsin, and carboxypeptidase, which is a mouthful, chop them up even more. And so we're breaking down the proteins into smaller and smaller fragments.
Okay.
And then it enters the intestine wall, where even more breakdown happens into single amino acids, or sometimes 2 or 3 still attached. And that allows it to get small enough to then be drawn in to the body. And of course, there's transporters that are looking for these and bringing these in. And then those are dumped via the portal vein, and they go straight to the liver.
It's always about the liver.
It's always about the liver. You could say the liver is the heart of the body, except for there is a heart. The liver is also the brain of the body, except for the brain.
But the more we learn about the liver, the more I can understand why the liver can heal as it does.
Yeah, it has to.
It has to. Yeah.
Because if it gets damaged, it's curtains.
Yeah.
If it couldn't heal. And that actually is a great segue, JJ.
Oh.
Because now the body has to use these aminos. And the liver might use them locally to repair the liver. So the liver sort of gets the first dibs on the whole thing.
Yeah.
But the liver is also going to convert them to creatine, glutathione. These are things we've heard of that the body uses for various purposes. Blood proteins or enzymes that might be created by the liver can all happen right there and then. But then the rest go into the general circulation of the body.
Okay.
And follow to all of the tissues where they can be scavenged for use. And it sounds complicated to this point, but this is barely even the beginning of how miraculously involved the process is. And we are not going to go even 1/100th into the depth of this.
Okay, I was a little worried there.
No fear. So now, traveling through the bloodstream, these amino acids are free floating in the bloodstream.
Okay.
And muscle fiber cells are fed by capillaries. And these are extraordinarily small blood vessels.
Yep. I remember that from biology.
Each is so small, blood cells pass single file. But amino acids are 6,000 to 8,000 times smaller than a red blood cell.
Okay.
So a red blood cell is 6,000 to 8,000 times larger.
Okay.
So the Earth is 1/100th the diameter of the sun.
Oh, okay.
An
This
amino
is
is 1/6000th the size of a red blood cell.
Super wee.
You might even say it's eensy. But not teeny weeny. That's reserved for atoms, I guess. So aminos diffuse through the capillary, and the capillary wall is 1 cell thick. And this diffusion, it doesn't just push through. There's transporters that know how to grab onto specific aminos and draw them into the interior of the cell. The aminos need to reassemble into usable tissue. And this is, I want to note on the slide, extremely simplified. So you remember what DNA is?
Yes.
That's like the master plan of how our bodies work and are constructed. So in the nucleus of the cell, there's DNA. And hanging around the DNA are some enzymes or some other molecule. And they actually read the DNA and make little copies that they put into the famous now mRNA molecule, which is basically the blueprint. And it's a specific blueprint to make a specific protein, or maybe even a subset of some protein, a peptide. And those are released out into the wild of the cell. Also are made these transport RNAs. These are like a delivery truck, but there's no driver, because nothing that happens really is on rails here. It's pretty much just moving around and encountering the receptors that it needs to encounter. And then the other RNA that's central to our program today is the ribosomal RNA, which is the machine that makes the protein. So you have the blueprint one, you have the transport one, and you have the machine.
Okay.
And all of those things work in concert to build in the cell whatever's needed, and that includes muscle tissue for contracting your muscle, or proteins that give sort of structure to the muscle, or enzymes that are needed within the cell, or other signaling molecules that are needed in the cell, are all created out of these aminos through these mechanisms. And if you want to go deep, there is no bottom. So the tRNA moves the aminos to the work site. So basically, they're just grabbing an amino and then they're just bouncing all around very, very quickly in the cell until they encounter something that can receive it. The mRNA is basically doing the same thing. It has a blueprint. However, there are, I guess, sort of tubules that kind of direct certain mRNA to specific locations, because obviously an mRNA that contains the blueprint to make an enzyme isn't needed over by the muscle tissue that needs to be repaired from your last workout. So there is a little bit of direction, but it's sort of just built into the structure of the cell. Most of it's just, I guess, moving around in the cytoplasm. And then we have the RNA, the rRNA that's going to be building this. And so you would think, okay, so great. Now we have this ribosomal RNA that's a machine, and it's going to assemble these into a protein that is going to attach to existing muscle. Well, it's not that simple, but we're not going to go much farther than that, other than to say that they make it, release it, and there's other things that grab it and attach it to where it needs to go. And there's not just one kind of protein that's a muscle tissue. There's all sorts of different muscle proteins that are chained together like train cars in a very specific order to do what they need to do to contract and release. And they're not just simple molecules, they are folded. So have you ever heard of protein folding? Mm-hmm. Well, that's a whole process in itself to fold them into the right shapes. And I mean, it really is. They take on a three-dimensional shape that is part of their mechanical function. It's just miraculous that it works. And then lots of other things happen because there's other processes like the whole metabolic process. Proteins are essential to that whole process, and we're not going to get into that at all today. And what I mean by that is the whole energy burning in the cell is a whole other process where aminos and proteins are involved. So the beef muscle is no human muscle. This is a typo, but it's true.
What was it supposed to say?
The cow light went out exactly when I said it. The cow's like, nope, I'm not you. It's supposed to say the beef muscle is now human muscle.
Oh.
But it is no human muscle because it was completely disassembled, transported, and reassembled to human DNA specifications into human muscle out of the same Tinker Toy molecules.
Okay.
And for those of you who don't know what a Tinker Toy is, you used Legos earlier, right?
Yeah, I said Lego.
Yeah.
So let me just jump in.
Okay.
So it gets all broken down. We started with what a muscle fiber was. And break down to small. We eat the meat.
Yep.
It's protein as well, right? Or it's muscle fiber.
Yep.
And then as it's digested, it's broken down. Mm-hmm. And then it's got to be reassembled.
Exactly. I mean, it is an extraordinary process. Now, we've all heard that we need these amino acids, and we know that there are essential and non-essential.
Yeah.
And the 9 essential amino acids are these: histidine, isoleucine, leucine, lysine, methionine, phenylalanine, threonine, and tryptophan. But there are 20 amino acids that the body needs, but it can make the other 11.
Okay. And these are all found in meat, correct?
Yes, in all meat.
In all meat.
Any species has all of them. Yep.
Okay. Which is why meat is so nutrient dense. It has everything. And it's because it's muscle tissue or organ meat that we're breaking down.
Correct.
Right? So none of those amino acids get lost in translation.
No. If it isn't in it, you can't get it.
Right.
So certain plants have some of these, but no plant has all of them. And you can get them all if you eat enough variety of plants, but that opens up a whole problem area for some of us, especially with the wheats and starchy plants that either we can't moderate or which come along with things that irritate our bodies. So eating red meat, for instance, it's just all nutrition. There's no anti-nutrients in it unless it's contaminated with something.
Because it's the Tinker Toy or it's literally the Lego set.
Well, and look at this. So a 12-ounce ribeye has 3.1 grams of histidine, 3.7 of isoleucine, 6.8 of leucine, 7.8 grams of lysine, on and on and on and on. If you look at the RDAs to the extent they're set for these are many multiples of the RDA for each of these for a human to survive.
Really?
Yes. But we must understand that an RDA has nothing to do with about optimization.
Yeah.
It's about a distribution on the bell curve where 95% of people are covered by that amount. But that doesn't mean that those were determined in a healthy population even.
Right.
So there's really no risk in having too much of these, with the exception, I mean, there's certain disease states. I think that phenylalanine is one of them, which is why there's a warning label on like your soda, soft drinks. It'll say contains phenylalanine.
Yep.
And I think it's because some people, I don't know, they can't break it down. I think it comes in artificial sweetener or something. And they have some issue with it if it builds up in too high a concentration. But I don't remember the specifics of that. So, but the important point is that all 20 of them are essential from the point of view of you need them to survive. The 9 are essential and means you have to eat them to have them. Now, the other 11 do come in food, including they come in the meat you eat, and they're very useful. If you eat them, your body doesn't have to make them. And there are precursors that you have to have on hand in order to make the non-essentials. And if you're low on those, maybe you won't be able to make enough of the essentials to meet your needs. So when they're labeled essential, non-essential, it's a little bit misleading, because if you're not thinking about it the right way, you're thinking, oh, I don't need the non-essential ones. And that's not what it means. You absolutely have to have them. It's just you don't necessarily need to eat them to have them. Does that make sense?
Yeah. The body makes those for the most part, but needs the precursors to be able to do so.
Yeah. And some people end up supplementing with some amino acids, either because they're working out or they may have a specific issue that they think that having even more of them helps. And I can't be a judge of that at all. That's an experimentation thing. But it doesn't seem like excess aminos are too difficult for the body to handle. I wouldn't just go out and buy a bottle of lysine supplement and just take the whole thing in one day. That seems like a really bad idea.
Well, not talking about supplementation here, but talking about eating whole foods, there seems to be a bit of a cap for most of us when it comes to eating meat, that there is a point of satiety where I'm not sure you could even overdose in any way.
Yeah, I suppose. Think about, for a long time, I was having a 12-ounce steak at breakfast, and then at dinner, I'd have another one. So I'm getting many multiples of what I need. At that point, it's not like my body is short on any of it. At that point, I have excess. And the body does have to handle excess amino acids. And the way that it does it is it uses it for energy, or it converts it to glucose and stores it as fat.
Yeah.
And that's a whole other ball of wax, as they say. But that's the very shallow dive into amino acids. And I learned a ton doing this, because I knew none of this until I did my research. And every time I learned a new little factoid, it would spawn like 20 questions. And I'd go down the rabbit hole learning about this. And then I'd be like, I can't condense all of this into a 20-minute video. It's too much. So we might do more videos on this topic and go down into some of the specifics. I will say that these things are not just building blocks. They're signals. When you ingest these and they're available, they send a message and they turn certain processes on. For instance, if we've heard of mTOR, which is an important thing to signal in order to say, okay, we're going to build muscle. And you want mTOR to be turned on. And I guess leucine is one of those. When it's available in high quantity, it says, okay, we're ready to go. Let's do it. But leucine is also a signal to glucagon as part of the metabolism. But leucine could be used directly also in the production of muscle tissue. So it has a lot of functions. Just as an example.
Well, I know you said you kept having more questions and you dive deeper down the rabbit hole. And what you've said today actually has provided me with more answers. I feel like as we've moved down this carnivore pathway, we have gotten more in touch with what is the proper human diet, what is more natural for the human, what makes sense for the human. And hearing this, it just makes so much sense that meat would be the focus of a diet. And it seems cray-cray that that's not what we've learned all our life.
Yep. All you need is a serving of protein the size of your palm. And that may be true from the bare minimum aminos that you need to stay with a pulse, but it's nothing to do with health and thriving.
Yeah.
And I always bring this back to shows like Alone or Naked and Afraid, where they're starving. And yeah, they can find some fruit. Maybe they can find some roots or some leaves that they can eat. But once they have protein and some fat, then that's when they actually go, oh my God. For at least for a moment, they are like, their body is going, that's what I needed.
Yeah.
And we've seen people on that show eat bird heads that they found. And I'm like, is a bird head edible? Yeah, it's totally edible.
Well, it's these amino acids,
That's right.
That's what you're getting.
And you've seen them crunch into like little limbs off of lizards, and they'll just eat the bones and everything. You're like, you can't eat that. Of course you can. The bones have got calcium in it. The bones have marrow, which is full of fat and protein. That's very important. All of the muscle tissue is protein. It's the glands that might contain venom. Yeah, don't eat that. That would be a dumb thing to do. Or maybe maybe there's some sort of a brain prion that if you undercook it, you're going to die. And so you have to maybe cook it beyond edibility. I'm no expert in that, by the way. So did you enjoy this? Would you like to hear a little bit more about amino acids and protein and this type of stuff in this easily digestible format? Let us know in the comments. Otherwise, you would have answered in your head and I couldn't have known the answer.
So with that, thank you so much for watching. Every day stronger.
Every day more blessed.